Why is it good to be a human? I would perhaps answer that by stating our intelligence, our psychological concepts of right and wrong, life and death, logical and illogical concepts of understanding. But would I be right? Because we cannot ignore our emotional intelligence when it comes to making connections with others and each other, our depths of understanding beyond our own bodies, of sympathizing and empathizing with people, with someone or something beyond ourselves. Putting it bluntly, what makes us human compared to any other animal? It is such a fascinating concept that's been explored time and again in creative pursuits, such as film and then some. Within many film concepts straying into horror, or perhaps more precisely body horror, we question what would happen if we were stripped of the thing or multiple things that make us different from any other animal. Of course, we think we are the most powerful creature on our world, and whether or not that is truth, it doesn't matter. We reflect upon ourselves, and this is just one avenue of exploration of understanding the difference between us and what happens when a parasite takes it away. This is Two Takes, and this is Second Watch, a short exploration of parasites and what it means to be human. This theory, although perhaps late to the game, actually happened when I was watching the anime horror Parasite. The concept of something otherworldly entering the body, much like Stephanie Meyer's The Host, but without the romantic and happy ending. Parasite, in a unique way, slowly explores with an emotional and perhaps logical and cellular way what happens to the body after infestation of something other. But what I am wondering about is the aspect of this anime horror, as well as many other examples, have explored the concept of humanity losing their emotional intelligence for expansion of the mind. Much like the film Lucy, although not a parasite within Lucy's body but an enhanced bright blue drug that infests her system, we can quickly see the rapid pace of her intelligence to open the mind to 100%, the countdown expressed throughout the film, and how, the closer Lucy gets to that percentage, the less of her humanity is seen. The human mind becomes easier to grasp concepts, language, easier to get to conclusion without the fog of emotions clouding a perhaps logical but cold judgment. It gets to the point where pain endings are stalled or not in use, as Lucy has surgery performed on her as she is on the phone. One single tear rolls down her cheek, expressing her love in a cold manner, realizing she is quickly losing the connection of self-expression, to something else. And this is happening in Parasite, with Shinichi, the main protagonist, somehow sensing a call for help from a dying puppy in the middle of a busy road. He takes the animal, asks this parasite in his hand whether or not the animal can be saved. It cannot, so he takes the puppy to a quieter place and lets it die in his arms in peace. However, after the puppy's death, Shinichi shows the puppy in the bin, to the horror of his classmate, explaining the puppy is no longer a puppy, but meat and bones. After reflection, Shinichi buries the puppy properly, concluding its body will give nutrients to the tree it's buried under. There is barely any emotional input. However, the act of holding the puppy in its last dying breath and eventually burying it when his classmate shows horror that Shinichi hasn't lost the entirety of his humanity. But you can understand what is happening. Something other is slowly taking over within the nervous and blood system, but it isn't in the control of the brain. With the parasite, eventually named Migi, explaining the attachment to one host to another is not a good idea, this reminds me of Venom and its need for a perfect match, and that connection of the brain, whether to control it or just to simply eat it. The concept of something other having the ability to essentially rebuild your body, make you faster, jump higher, withstand pain, or even evade attacks altogether. The invasion of the body snatchers, and perhaps the many versions of it, has the same concept, however perhaps concentrating on the paranoia and instinctive thoughts of the protagonist that something isn't quite right. This isn't about making their host seem better for the survival of the parasite, but rather a takeover altogether, making the concept of the human and what makes this most seem irrelevant compared to the bigger picture. The bigger picture most likely invading Earth for all its resources and then moving on. Unlike big blockbuster movies like Venom, where the infection or infestation is messy, loud, and aggressive, we find Parasite and the invasion of the body snatchers, as well as other films, be like a quiet invasion of sorts. And what do we lose? That is the most fascinating concept. We understand, without the presentation of parasites, that the loss of someone's reality, what makes someone who they are, their essence, can be stripped away or slowly taken away in many other ways, such as Alzheimer's and other medical mysteries. It just seems within the world of film, looking outwards with something like a parasite invading is still somewhat looking inwards, at us, at who we are. We seem to want to explore what makes us who we are, whether that means something enhancing us, within, or stripping it away. We find ourselves always on the brink of becoming something else, something other. We are so close to any other animal when it comes to survival of the fittest. Our need for food, water and shelter, to fight or run, to populate, to increase numbers and size. That's where we started after all. And then throughout evolution we began to question everything beyond ourselves and everything within ourselves. Many films seem to base this exploration into almost the same conclusion, whether it be a parasite or something outside of ourselves, or something that happened within our own bodies on a cellular level. We are a very vulnerable race that are susceptible to change. We are balancing between two extreme opposites, it seems. More emotional stimulation and empathy, connecting us more with others of our kind, or the cold, logical calculation of sacrificing the many for the few that would help deem the ones to survive. Like a battle of the right and left side of the brain, it seems. Whether it deems the truth or not, we have control over how we express ourselves, being influenced by nature and nurturing tactics until we come of age to make our own decisions. That is, unless it's taken away from us from a parasite.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed what was said, then please support the show from my Patreon. And if you want to know what's happening next, follow my Instagram. To know my day-to-day thoughts, follow my Twitter. And if you want to read what was said instead, then follow my blog, linked elsewhere. With your support, I can only make this better, so again, thank you from the bottom of my heart.